Well, thank you everybody for being here. We're going to go ahead and kick off the session today. There's a very intimate group of people, a cute little room with the flowers on the table. It almost feels like we're at a wedding. So maybe we can figure out who's getting married after this. This is actually, some of the folks that went on the tour this morning got to hear a little bit about the personal story. This is actually the hotel that my brother got married in. So the last time I pulled up into the hotel, I was like, oh my God, I recognize this hotel. And then we went to TAC this morning, the Texas Advanced Computing Center, where my brother works. And my mom lives in a community just down the street. So very surreal being here, but a really good time. We've intended to bring this group together specifically because these are folks that really can move the industry forward, that are interested in pushing forward and interested in thinking about new ideas and innovation. And so I think I wanted to kick this off with, a few minutes, one, highlighting the people that are around the table here. So if you haven't already spent some time meeting some new faces, meeting some friendly faces, we're really intending to bring together a particular group of people that can really think about innovation, but also recognize that now is a time that innovation is so badly needed in this space. When I think about the pressures and challenges facing this space that we all know so intimately, it's almost like, I don't know that I could think of like another thing that could make things harder, right? So if we look back over the last 3 years, we had COVID, of course, and what a hit that had on occupancy. And now, we're trying to recover occupancy, and a lot of folks are back, but some folks aren't. And so we're still trying to recover occupancy, and we might have made some concessions around rates to get occupancy back and things like that. So we had a once in a century kind of pandemic that we're all still reeling from in different ways. Then coming out of that, we had historic inflation, right? Inflation at a pace that has not been seen in decades, which meant margin compression. It meant the cost of labor was higher, the cost of insurance was higher, the cost of food is higher. Every single cost went up, right? So we're still trying to recover occupancy at a time when so top line has been hit, now bottom line is getting, just pummeled. And then the response to inflation being so high is to raise interest rates. Okay, so now here's another thing for us to deal with. Now the cost of capital is higher than it's ever been, and it's gone up faster than it's gone up in 40 years. So we got hit from a top line, then we got hit from an OpEx, now we got hit from a CapEx. And so now we're getting all this pressure from ownership groups and things like that. So there has never been a time like more needing of innovation than now. Fortunately, necessity is the mother of invention, and this is the time when the things that really do move the needle rise to the surface, and kind of we can push through together. So we know some of the greatest companies came out of the dot-com bust, for instance. Like a whole bunch of companies failed, but out of that came the Googles and things like that. I very much believe the same thing will be true here. We see the macro tailwinds ahead around the aging population and just how much the work here is needed. We think a lot about Alzheimer's disease. There are so many people living with Alzheimer's disease that really, really need us. And so it is going to be the folks that make it through this period are going to do so much in the years ahead. So I want to highlight those are the people in this room. So I just, outside of anything safely related, I'm really excited about the people here and how much of an impact you guys are going to have over the next decade. So with that, kind of some of those thoughts in mind, we are going to have our first panel that I'm particularly excited about. So this one is, the focus is on operators and capital partners. So starting to think about that, interest rate going up, what are we doing about it? How do we kind of manage? I know we've got a lot of operators who feel like owners are just breathing down our neck because, the cost of our debt went up so much and things like that. And so how are we thinking about solving those problems? And from owner standpoint, we've got a lot of operators who it feels like we don't have the right data we need and things like that. So how do we bridge that gap and kind of really bring the innovation that's needed? So specifically, this session explores the evolution of operators and capital partners, focus on innovation, how they balance long-term versus short-term investment gains, and what they look for in the right technology partner. You'll hear how innovation has successfully moved the industry forward and what the future of care delivery looks like, with technology playing a critical role. You'll also come to understand the risk of waiting to adopt new solutions, including the cost of inaction. So with that, I'd love to introduce our panel moderator, Manisha, who will come up and introduce the other panelists.
So I'm Manisha Batija. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. My company, Doyen Healthcare Capital, with my partner, Kristen Ahrens, we are the healthcare vertical for private equity firms that don't have the expertise in healthcare. So our first joint venture is with a New York-based private equity firm that's committed capital to the sector and understood that this is a hard sector and they needed expertise. And so we're looking to deploy that capital in today's market, which has been a little slow, given the market itself, but we'll get there. So I'm just going to let everyone introduce themselves. That's
No man's land. I didn't want to break you again. Good afternoon, everybody. Chris Gay, founder and CEO of Vitality Living. We're an owner-operator based southeast. We currently have about 28 properties and one under LOI, so growing now through acquisition. We also have done new development, but obviously for the things that Manisha just mentioned, there's some opportunity to buy, so that's what we've been doing. I think we have a different, because we also are in the ownership stack, we tend to think a little bit differently.
Good afternoon, Brandon Rebar. I am the CEO of Sonida Senior Living, formerly Capital Senior Living. Rebranded about a year and a half ago. We own and operate 71 communities across the country, based here in Texas, just up in Dallas. We are about a half assisted living communities, and then we have 30% independent, and the remainder are memory care. So over the last couple of years, we've been working with Safely You and a couple of other technology partners just around how to continue to improve our model, and just looking at opportunities to expand in this marketplace as well. So good to meet all you today.
Good afternoon, Ray Oborn. I'm with American Healthcare REIT. We are a public but non-traded healthcare REIT. We have about 4.6 billion of assets under that we own. I'm the executive vice president of asset management for kind of the senior housing assets. So we have about 207 senior housing healthcare related assets that we own. I work with about 14 different operators who manage those assets for us. We have about 2,000 units, or 20,000 units. We have about 11,500 of IL, AL, and memory care, and then about 9,500 of SNF units. So we kind of cover the healthcare vertical. About a year and a half ago, we started talking with some of our operators about implementing Safely You, and we ran a pilot program with 7 communities with Cogir. At the time it was Cadence, now it's Cogir as our operator in North Carolina. And the pilot was really, really successful. We were very pleased with the results, and we've since rolled it out to a couple other portfolios and a couple other operators. So we're very pleased with Safely You, and are excited to hear the really great feedback from our operators and the families and the residents. So it's been great. Glad to be on the panel. I was here last year and they invited me back, so that's amazing. I stepped in as the last minute fill-in. I didn't get the invite initially, but they needed a fill-in, so they had. So I said, well, hey, I will come, but on one condition. My wife and I celebrate 32 years tomorrow, and so I said if I can bring my wife and stay one more night, I'll be there. So here I am. But tomorrow we'll celebrate 32 years. And we have 6 kids, and I'm from Utah, and it's one wife. I've been married to the same wife for 32 years. It's amazing. And we have 3 grandkids and 2 more on the way. So life is great. But anyway, I'm glad to be here.
I don't know how to follow that up, but I'll try. So I'm going to start maybe with you, Brandon, with a kind of a broader question. How do you figure out where innovation is needed and how you're going to start to execute on that?
It's a challenging question, I think, especially these days when we're faced with just the operating environment that we're in. I think for us, I kind of think about it in 3 different buckets. And it's all with the resident experience kind of at the heart of it. But the challenge to me right now is how do we, as an industry, continue to attract people to make their decision to move into communities 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months sooner than maybe they otherwise would have. So if technology can appeal to people that are making decisions around how soon they want to access senior living, whether it be an independent or assisted or moving into memory care, then I think it creates a lot of value. And then I think once they're in our communities, it goes without saying, if you can help them live and thrive and stay in the community without having to move to a different level of care sooner, and we say increased length of stay, but it's really about keeping people healthy and making sure that they're in the right setting. And if it supports that very clearly, then I think it's worth looking into and expanding and trying out. And then the last piece is just how do we run our communities really efficiently? and how do we make sure that the challenges this whole world is always going to face around staffing and attracting people to work in our communities, if the technology can check that box and people say, I like working here because of, or my friend told me to go work there because of, then I think, or if it gives our operating team visibility into the working environment, those things are really important right now. So that's kind of the three ways that we think about buckets of looking at investment. And I'd say that it's important for people who run multiple communities to think of their communities as places where you can incubate technology, and you need to be innovative. So it doesn't have to fit every single community for us to try it out.
And Chris and Ray, how do you work with the operators to identify those areas? Are they coming to you or are you coming to them? It sounds like, Ray, with you on Safely You were coming to your operators.
Yeah, so we're as a real estate REIT, right? We're a healthcare REIT. We do not operate our assets. I did that for 25 years and decided that was enough and learned my lesson. So I like to say I'm a recovering operator instead of alcoholic, but I was very close to being alcoholic too. But good thing, but the Utah part kind of, that outweighed it. So instead of drinking, I just lost hair and had more kids. But operating was it's very challenging. And so I have a huge amount of respect for our operators, but I do look to them primarily to kind of be the driver of innovation. In this particular case, I remember having conversations with Carrie and Tom about learning about Safely You and thinking, that makes a lot of sense as an owner representative, right? If technology can one, improve the quality of outcomes and make the resident experience better, I'm all in. If it can, two, if it could help make the staff's job a little bit more effective, right? If the caregivers maybe aren't, and the nurses aren't, and spending as much time trying to find out if a fall actually occurred and then following up on the care plans and making interventions, that's a good thing, right? It's more effective. And the caregivers, the direct caregivers would hopefully have more time to spend with residents outside of their administrative duties. That's a good thing. And then third, if it would help mitigate risk as a owner, and whether we see that through lowered, falls incidents and lawsuits and potentially, hopefully, lower premiums, then that's also a good thing. So those are kind of the three things I look at it. One, resident outcomes first and foremost. Does it improve the quality of life? Two, does it make the staff job easier? And three, does it mitigate risk? I think is kind of the filter I look at. And when we're looking at, do we want to make that investment? And then to your point, though, your question, I do, though, rely on our operators to come to us with ideas, right? I expect that they're involved, they're listening, they're learning what ways, how can we help you in what I want to have as a collaborative partnership between our ownership crew, right, our REIT, and then the operators that really make the magic happen and are working on the day-to-day assets.
So I agree with a couple points. I agree with both what Roy and Brandon shared. I would add also the families into that mix too, because I do think families expect us and to be innovative to some extent, right? To be ahead, and I think that is a way we can differentiate. And also, we have to think about the staff a little more deeply. I think a lot of times we resonate all the aspects of this business through the people we serve, who are vitally important. But I would argue that the caregiver is the most important person to me, because without them, we don't care for people. And so I think it's making sure too, whatever we bring in, not only efficiency, but do we explain it? Do they understand it? Is it something they can get behind? I think is important. I think the operator owner piece, I kind of think about it. I don't like it if my owner has to bring my solution to me, right? I am okay with collaborating, but if the owner has to bring the solution to me, then I'm not doing my job. I think there's this kind of, we all have seen it, right? This tug of war between owners and operators, right? They kind of sit on both ends and getting in between. And we're all in it for the same reasons, right? We're trying to take care of people, but we're also trying to run a business. And I think the operator has to be thinking, what can I do to improve this business through whether resident experience, team member experience, family experience, and ownership experience, and be able to articulate the return. I think I'll use Safely You as a great example. We piloted this initially. We ate the cost initially, but we were able to prove concept and then take it to our ownership partner and say, we need to expand this. And when we gave them real data and real facts and real results, They're okay with it. But I think sometimes we get in this mindset, we should just do it because we're telling you, because we're the operator, you know what you're talking about. Well, I think that's not the right approach. And so any technology, we have to be careful that there's got some kind of return, something that we can tangibly show makes an impact in the business in a positive way. And we should be driving that.
How do you get your capital partners? You mentioned returns, right? So certain aspects of it are quantitative, but I imagine a lot of the aspects are more qualitative. So how do you get, especially for those of you that have multiple capital partners, how do you get them all on board? Or do you start with one? Like, what's the strategy there?
So we're structured, we have multiple. We take every deal to a different equity group as our LP, and we kind of figure out what the best fit is. Like for us, we kind of think capital kind of fits certain deals better. So I will answer your question by saying I don't have the perfect answer, because I've got some partners that are really open, they're innovative thinkers, and so it's easier to get them across the finish line. I've got others that are tough, and so we've been really trying to be consistent, right? Trying to send, all right, what is the value, prove that value out, and I'll just be honest, some of our partners are like, yeah, let's do it. Others are like, well, they're not ready to get there. And I think then it's, okay, how do we keep proving and showing them better outcomes? And so I think eventually we'll get them there, but it takes time sometimes because they're not ready to commit. They're looking at the bottom line, especially post-COVID, right? Where margin compression has happened tremendously. Wages are up 15 to 20%, insurance costs are up. I mean, we're trying to find every dollar we can. And I think it's hard to say, hey, we're going to throw on. So what we did in our Florida buildings, we started out with that pilot. Our equity partner came on board. It's Sculptor, they're a group. They're a really good group to work with. But then we promised them if we could get traction, we would try to monetize it. And so far we've done that. We've covered about 2/3 of the cost. We charge the residents back $75 a month. And we got a little loss of opt-ins initially, but we're back up to like 85% compliance. And so I think if you can show to the customer that this is a technology that makes sense, but we got to share some cost, that's a real transparent, real conversation. And I think if you can show value, they'll do it. If it doesn't have value, they're not going to pay for it.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is just the recognition that every dollar you're asking your owner for right now is coming out of a pocket that is paying increased debt levels, that's competing with, hey, do I have to do new flooring next year? It's really, really important, I think, not to take an aggressive approach as much as it is proof of concept. Like, I've proven this elsewhere, here's how it looks, here's how the cash flow is going to be impacted by this decision that we're making together. Because in a time of great stress, like, new investment and innovation generally struggles. And so you have to feel very confident that you can deliver on what you've presented to them. And I think also when we look at our technology partners, we look for folks that recognize where we're at from a capital perspective, and they look for flexibility in terms and how they can invest with us and how we can scale the investment appropriately. So flexibility in a technology partner, I think, is also important, so that we can find the data, and even if we prove out a great investment, if you don't have some of those other characteristics, you're not going to be able to scale it up. It'll just be one or two places where it worked well.
So let's get maybe into innovation itself. So where do you see the most opportunity today for innovation in our sector?
Everywhere.
Pick a couple.
Well, I mean, we're such a fragmented industry all over the place. Not just operator fragmentation, ownership fragmentation, market fragmentation, asset class fragmentation, right? It's just interesting because there's still opportunity to go in. We did an acquisition recently, and the buildings were still on paper Mars and didn't have Wi-Fi structure, right? So I think there's some catch-up. George opened with it. Like, this industry is behind. We got to catch up. But I think that's also a caution too, because when you're behind, you think you got to run faster to catch up. You think maybe you got to throw Hail Marys instead of taking singles. And so I think you just got to be very thoughtful in the approach, methodical, and I like trying things in small doses to see if they work. Because if you go global, and nothing turns me off on commenting on something Brandon said, when a tech partner or a vendor or someone comes in and says, oh, I've got this. You don't worry, you'll pay for it. Don't worry, they'll pay for it. Right? Don't worry, your customers are going to find value in it without proving concept. So being able to prove concept out and show it works is, I think, the better strategy. And I think there's opportunity. I think the resident experience opportunity we were talking about at our table, like that technology is moving so fast. Like a couple of years ago, we were talking about putting Alexa in every apartment. Like that's like old school now, right? I mean, it's like, come on, Alexa, let's move on. It's like my kids give me shit about Instagram versus Facebook, right? I'm like, I thought Facebook's still cool, but not anymore.
No, it's
They're way off. Now I'm Snapchatting. I'm Snapchatting, which is good. But my point to all that is, like, it's moving so fast on the resident side. I think we have to be cautious there. So I do think the opportunities more lie in the efficiency standpoint. Like, what kind of technologies can make our staff more efficient, right? So I think of a platform like Safely You. It allows us, our staff gets real-time data. They're able to move faster. They're able to act better. So I can see us being able to be more efficient, right? You can maybe get a little more efficient, stretch a little bit because you've got better technology to measure what's going on with your resident population. I think things like that. We were talking about table. One silly one that I'm looking at is the robots that serve in the dining rooms. Have you seen those? Have you been to a restaurant and they serve? It's kind of cool, kind of neat. But like, I think about that from experience, makes me more efficient, right? Because now I can put a server in the dining room and they can cover more tables and stay more connected, and they're not running back and forth. So it might save us some dollars and improve an experience. And so I don't think they have to be crazy big things. Little things can move us forward. But I think in the efficiency standpoint and that team experience standpoint, we got to focus in there right now.
I'll give you a specific example. I know I'm the moderator, but I'm going to give a specific example of where I think innovation is needed because I just lived this myself with my mother. Emergency call buttons, right? Because everyone presses their button. It could be because they don't know how to use their remote, or it could be they fell and hit their head and they're bleeding and they need help literally right now. So I would love to see innovation in the emergency call buttons where how can you improve that resident experience where maybe you can talk to them or you could see them, like some way to assess, is this really an emergency or not? And if it's not, you can say, okay, I'll be there in 10 minutes. But then again, I went through this for my mother. If she's fallen, she can tell you that. And then you can send as many people as you need to come and help her. That to me is a real life, how do we improve the resident experience?
That's a good one, because that's kind of a necessary evil that is, we're required to have it, but it really is antiquated.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other innovation ideas?
Well, yeah, I think I think anything that again enhances the quality experience and the resident experience, I think is great. And one of the things that we're looking at with our largest operator, we own a majority stake in Trilogy Health Services, which is based in Louisville, Kentucky. They have about 126 integrated healthcare campuses. So they're big players, so to speak, in the Midwest for skilled nursing, right? So we are looking at some value-based pricing models and thinking about forming our own plan with the help of a group. And so then, so clinical care coordination, I think, and making sure that the outcomes, the healthcare outcomes, which really will drive value-based pricing and will help with either incentives or quality enhancements to either Medicaid rates in states and or saving costs if you have insured lives, right? That you're actually participating in an insurance risk program. I think that could really go a long way. So clinical care coordination and just integrating systems a little bit easier, right, across all disciplines, whether it's your allied services. Trilogy has pharmacy and therapy, right? But do they really communicate, and is there good integration across all disciplines and systems? So clinical care coordination, I think, would be a key, because I think it will drive better outcomes, which then ultimately, hopefully, will drive better reimbursement for providers.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add to that, and I think the care coordination piece is fundamental to what technology has to do for senior living to access payers and to access a different, way that we receive compensation for our services. And I think if you said right now, what's most impactful for us, I look at who's going to pay the bill. And so if we know that senior living right now rates are increasing for residents pretty significantly, do I think I can bolt on even more on top of what the industry's been targeting in terms of low double digits and high single digits over the last couple of years? I think there's a lot of challenges on that front, especially we're upper middle market operators. So it is very, very meaningful to say, hey, would you pitch in $50, $75 a month more to a resident or their family? So if you're going to do that, it better show real specific value to them in terms of what they're seeing. So if it does reduce a hospitalization where they'd have to pay $1,000 copay, that's a very meaningful thing. And so, things like Safely You are fantastic for that. But what can I control the most and who's paying for? I'm paying the bill for my labor. And so I have to make sure that when I'm walking our communities, like, people have to know what they're supposed to be doing and when they're supposed to be doing it. And so the more visibility we have into the needs of our residents, what time of day they need it, how many people are required for it, and how those needs evolve as somebody's living with us, I think that's incredibly valuable technology. And we actually just did some work with a new nurse call system that gives us basically a blueprint of activity in our communities. And so I can find out, am I understaffed or am I overstaffed in certain areas? And so when we get that actionable information in the hands of our local decision makers, it goes a long way, because then there's not the argument around, I don't have enough people. And there's not the regional calling up saying, like, why are you staffing at this level or something along those lines. So I think for us, the most actionable piece is on ensuring that our team members are really, providing the care that is needed at the time it's needed.
How do you find the right, so let's say you've identified something that's going to help your resident live a better quality of life and financially beneficial. How do you find the right technology partners, right? So Safely is a great example. There's been pilot programs. They're doing a ton of outreach, but you have an idea. How do you then go about maybe trying to find a way to do it?
I know for us, and I'll just answer real quickly, it's the network of really innovative operators and owners that are at places like this. I mean, it's talking about innovation as an operating tool on a consistent basis. That's how I heard about Safely You, and some of the other things is, hey, I tried this, or hey, I tried that. You should really think about it. So I think as a community, the more we share our experiences and why we think it benefits, we're not competing against each other up here. Like, we don't compete against each other. We're competing against the market and ensuring that residents and their families want to choose senior living for the next 20 years. So I want everybody to be full. And I think sharing ideas is how we think about finding partners.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I think sometimes this industry, you still run into those folks that think that they're doing something proprietary. At the end of the day, we're all kind of doing the same stuff. And so I think it's having these open discussions, sharing. People talk about this industry that you hear at the same time. I'm really committed to making people's lives better. And if you are, we have to be open and share what works and what doesn't work. So I think being involved in networks like this, other networks, and then also listening. You got to be open to try some stuff and listen a little bit. And then we're starting to get ahead. We're trying to build our own kind of internal tech engine to start building some of the stuff on our own, right? And maybe we can create. It's all about pain points. Where are the pain points, and how can you do to try to solve them? So
You can mine the data on your own and then maybe get another operator partner with you, or another capital to partner with you.
Be something that we're part Vitalia. We're part of the Servium Group, which is a group of collaborative operators that are working together, trying to how do we figure out that value-based care model? Because you think about it, I'll use the Safely You. Alan Fairbanks, who's a part of that team, shared this with me, and it made sense. So we did our first building, and Mike's back there, he can confirm my numbers. I think we reduced ER visits by like 82%. These two big memory cares in Florida. Anybody operate in Florida?
No longer.
I don't know why I'm doing it. I must be a masochist if I want to be in Florida, right? Because there's no tort reform, right? So the plaintiff attorney can bring anything up and just go at you. And when you don't have anything to defend yourself, you're guilty, right? So you're writing a check no matter what. And so our big push is, let's put this platform in place, and just reducing those ER visits was like unbelievable, right? I mean, the fact that stuff that happens, because when someone, especially with memory care, goes to the ER, bad things can happen pretty quickly. And so I was, Sharon and Alan had a conversation. He's like, yeah, but what did you get out of that? And I'm like, well, we got longer length of stay. I went through all that. We got longer length of stay, better outcomes, families are happy, all the stuff we talk about. And he's like, but did you make any money? And I'm like, well, I got longer length of stay, better outcomes. and he's like, no, you know who made money? The insurance company. Because when you don't send somebody to the ER, they're saving $5,000 a pop. And so it really got me thinking. And that's what the Servium Group's a great group where we're trying to figure out, how do we collaborate? Because I can bring 3,000 beds to the table, but if as a consortium we can bring 30 or 40,000 beds, we actually get people thinking. And we've got to figure out. But the only way we're going to get into that world is with data. not data we make up, right? Not stuff that we kind of say, hey, look at this, it works. It's got to be stuff that's tangible, right? So that's where the future's going, and I think that's where we have to all be talking about too. Where does that take us? And how do we get there?
What about innovation and just transparency in the industry? So for example, the adult child, right, is looking for options and wants to see pricing and wants to see offerings. I think that's another great area for innovation, to put that information out there. And that gets back to what you were talking about. People think their stuff is proprietary, and so they don't want to put it out there. I think that's another problem in our industry as well.
I don't want to keep talking, so I'm going to hand it.
I just want you to build the technology so I can buy it.
All right, dude. I don't know I'm building yet, but we're going to do it.
I like it. We'll buy it if it works.
What about innovations for the adult child? So ways to bring them into the fold and have more interactions with them. Any ideas and innovations there?
Yeah, I think you see a fair amount of technology that's being designed around here are the activities that your loved one's engaging in, and here's some pictures from it, and here are all the really nice things that are happening in communities, and more of that's being shared, or having direct connections with activity leadership or the wellness leadership in communities is really important. Creating that portal, I think it again, it's going to come down to like, how do you invest in it? And I think that is almost, I hate to say it, but the relationship has to still be personal with the leadership in your community and the loved ones. Using some technology that's affordable to create that, I think, is helpful. But are they going to pay you $20 a month for it? I think that's the challenge, and so that's where we're trying to be mindful of being innovative, but not throwing money at really cool products that may not be something that's ultimately going to be paid for. Yeah.
I thought you were going to stop.
I got to talk. I'll make sure I give extra time at the end. So I think it's interesting. You said something about transparency. I do think, right, the thing about COVID, like the goods and bads that came out of it, right? I bought everybody video cameras before COVID. No one used them. Now, if I'm not on video, they're giving me a hard time. But I think, like, for interaction and allowing families into the community, social media has kind of done that, right? It's there. I think it's more technology around like transparency. And so I'll use a real story about, so Safely You, we had an incident where memory care, resident all of a sudden has a bruise, family doesn't know where it came from, we don't have a record of it, what the heck happened. In that scenario, usually who's to blame? Us, right? It's us. And that's because we're there to take care. And we were able to go back, see what happened. And it was a private duty caregiver. It was a private duty caregiver that they had, I think, working for him for a couple of years. She did something really egregious. And we were able to use the technology to be transparent with the family. We said, okay, we know what happened. We had the video, but we watched it. It wasn't good. And we said, we don't think we'll tell you, we'll give you the script. You can choose if you want to watch it. We recommend you don't. We went through that meeting with the family. My ED, my regional wellness director was there. They did a really good job. And that family listened and was like, we don't want to see it. We've heard enough. Thank you so much. So I think the transparency more on like what's happening, because we're always about, oh, look at the rah, look at all the good. The bad stuff happens at times. And I think being able to use technology to help be transparent and honest, and I think that makes you more credible, is also very important. I think we got to get that. Like pricing transparency, I think, is something. In the multifamily world, I can get anybody I want, right?
So
right?
easy.
Yeah, right? I mean, and we don't have that because we all want to protect our rates, or we're all discounting and doing different things. And so I think we have to work on transparency to that customer and that adult child. And so to give them confidence that we're not just blowing a bunch of smoke about all the good. When something doesn't happen, we're going to react the right way. We're going to tell you what the costs, why you're paying the costs you are. That's where I think we have to get more transparent. I think technology can help us with that.
I think there's also an opportunity if some of these apps, I did use them. Like I said, I just went through this. I did use some of those where they're like, look, you can see your mom in an activity, which was nice when it was there. I think the piece that I would love to see innovation on is how can I more understand, like, is my mom going to meals, or is there something going on with her that I need to go back and check in, right? That type of technology still hasn't been developed. And I think in this time where we're all used to instant information, that would have been very important to me to just predict what was going on.
Well, I mean, I think we're kind of, and this is a benefit, but we're working backwards from what happened, 5-10 years ago, which was I want a nanny cam in my unit because I have no visibility into anything that's happening. So I just want to see everything. And the loved one is saying that, and then the resident's like, no, you can't see anything. I don't want you to be able to see into my unit. And so I think the benefit of technology can be just like you have a security system at your home, you don't have cameras across each one of your rooms because you feel like you have confidence that nothing's wrong. And so that's where Safely You, I think, has shown tremendous benefit. The residents and their families, they don't need to see the video necessarily to know that it is working and to be able to have access to information that it's really helpful as opposed to needing to see every second of it.
So you mentioned earlier, Brandon, that maybe because of where we are as a sector with margins and labor challenges and all of that, maybe innovation is taking a little bit of a hit because everyone's so focused on the bottom line. What do you think has to change to kind of get people back to focused on that? NOI needs to go up, I know that. Margins need to go up, but what else needs to change, whether it's the capital partners mentality or access to innovation centers that do these kinds of things?
So what needs to change? Last year, at the same symposium, I shared some painful statistics about our SHOP portfolio, right? That we had